Well, welcome to Radio FM88 Australia. We're broadcasting here in the Brisbane studios in Queensland. For those people, you can actually listen to us free to air in the local area, or you can jump on to our Facebook page, Radio FM88 Australia, where you go YouTube, Radio FM88 Australia. You can then participate in the show. So, as you know, with this type of streaming product, you can be anywhere in the world. And so my co-host, as you probably realise after these last 2.5 years, is none other than Andrena. She's based in the UK. It's currently 10 o'clock in the morning in the UK, and we're here in 7 o'clock. Our guest from all around the world is on the north side of Brisbane. So it's a big cheerio. Andrena, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. And if you're new to Dreaming the New Dream, it's our pleasure to have you on the show. Today is the 9th of June, 2022, and it's it's my pleasure to have the lovely Michael Lamb back, who has talked about so many different things. And today we sort of have a theme to start with regarding past lives, Akashic Records, mystery school, and all sorts of things. So where are we starting today, Michael? And welcome, and it's lovely to have you back on the show again.
Thank you very much. I hope my sound is really good there. It's reaching out all across the airwaves across the world there in the UK. Yeah, don't mind me. I've just been doing some mowing and a bit of work around the yard. So, yes, it was great. I got out there amongst the sun today, so I'm a bit bright red, which is good. Beetroot head, we call it here. Today we're starting with the past lives. You know, the question, of course, have we lived before? You know, why am I so attracted to certain places or certain areas in the world? So, what is deja vu? There's some places like a temple, feels like you've been there before. Anything along those kind of lines are the areas that we're going to be talking about. And reincarnation, it seems to be quite prevalent in a lot of different cultures and philosophies and religions. In fact, most of the cultures around the world, there's no doubt. Hence, burial mounds where people have, the elders and that have been buried, and the families continue to, they always tap into their ancestors and the tribes they're nearby. So that's what we're looking at tonight. So I was just going to take it through in stages because I do this as a presentation. We did it the other week. So yeah, exactly. You'll look at many of the different actors and actresses around the world. Obviously, this may sound a little bit let's say cliche, but those face types are actually quite strong. You will see them again and again. This looks like such and such. And this is what happens with, when people have, new children born into the family. It could be your nephew or your niece or, and the great aunt will say, oh, he looks just like grand uncle, Ernest when he was a little boy. You know what I mean? The facial type may be quite similar. It's interesting too, because we're moving into this age of facial recognition software, yet all the actors, in any of the Hollywood or right across the world, whether it be in the UK or any of the areas, Bollywood even, they have stunt doubles. So people are actually quite similar in looks. Plus you have twins, triplets, quadruplets and things like that, faces that are quite similar. And this is not uncommon around the world. So when people have almost like a body double, there's a type or a character of a face. And as we say in the industry, is actually, you are as you think. You are what you eat. You actually take on those particular characteristics, and it's quite the norm when you look at these people. There's strong characteristics, similar, high cheekbones, strong jaw, anything like that. And it doesn't matter about the hair and things like that, but the actual facial features are quite strong. And also, people tend to model themselves on certain people, so you'll almost get that doppelganger effect. So with this picture here that you brought up there, Reincarnation, there's quite a bunch of different actors, everyone from Christian Bale to Jack Black and Eddie Murphy and Sylvester Stallone, and many of them, they actually have very, very similar people that look like them. There's even Nicolas Cage there. Yeah, and the people that are like them. There's our friend Zuckerberg as well. And,
it's amazing when you put them together like that. You can see the different, how alike they are, eh?
Yeah. I grabbed this off the net, and there was only one that was recent. So, I've got to just borrow this. So yeah, thank you very much. Just to see that kind of characteristic. again. But I found that I had 4 or 5 friends who were actually quite similar in looks and stature, and they were very good friends of mine, and they were all about the same. My friend Jane 108 is very similar to the best man at my wedding back in the 80s. That was Stuart Campbell. They were very, very similar people. You know, their facial strengths, and that not too dissimilar to our friend Jeffrey here. It's strong face, round, and they're actually very, very dedicated to what they do. They're very focused in what they do. They have those kind of characteristics, and they're all into their spiritual strengths. There was also another friend of mine. He was a Swiss guy. His name was Urs. He had the same structured face, and a lot of the features were very, very similar. You know what I mean? Like the jawline, the mouth. There's only small, slight differences. I mean, obviously, you know, you spot them, but the actual face was quite similar. Almost like it's a body type, you know, we look at it like that. So, yeah, other people are very drawn to certain civilizations or places. You know, I'm going to visit India, or I'm going to visit South America. Or I really want to, you know, go to Ireland or Scotland, or, you know, they really want to visit France or Germany or you know, they want to go to certain parts of, you know, Southeast Asia. They feel they've been strongly drawn there. So this book here, European Cases of the Reincarnation Type, was by Dr. Ian Stevenson. We'll be talking about him a few times through the show. He's a guy that, or a doctor that developed this system, or he worked for over 40 years and looking into reincarnation and how true it was. And he had over 3,000 people that were like young children that recognized that they'd lived before, and almost to the detail that they could remember names, dates, places, and addresses when they were very, very young as well. I have a little bit of information now. I was just going to look it up on Dr. Ian Stevenson. I'll just have a look at it there, because we're not just like physical body. Okay, so what we're looking at is like a surprising number of people experience a continuing consciousness when they're clinically dead. So that happens with NDEs as well. So as we go into this, we'll just look at this structure that seems to be very, very much well integrated, not just into our mainstream, but it seems to be very much in the past through these ancient cultures, and how well these people were having these deja vu experiences. I think we've all experienced deja vu. We've gone to this place like, oh man, it's like I've been here before. I know this place, you know. There's another book that Dr. Ian Stevenson brought out, Children Who Remember Previous Lives, and it's a question of reincarnation. And he investigates, once again, all these children that had these absolute certainty that they'd been here before, or they'd been alive before, and they could remember specific details about their previous lives. It's even a large fact that people carry a wound, actually carried in their physical body, like a scar or like a birthmark or any sort of small indication, even from a young age, where they might have been mortally wounded in a previous cycle as well. So it looks like we definitely have more than one cycle here on this planet. You know, I'm looking more at the fact that we've had multiple cycles, and you've all heard the term, oh, they're an old soul, or they're quite a young soul. And that makes a hell of a difference when you're talking to certain people. When it comes to spirituality and, you know, the depth of conversation, you know, a young soul, they're quite, you know, they're new, they're not aware. Whereas old souls, you know, they know exactly what they're talking about. They're quite switched on. And an old soul could be in a very, very young body, and a new soul could be in a very old body as well. It just depends. Just look at the physical body as just a, you know, it's an habitation, like a vehicle, you know, for our soul to incarnate and experience all these different aspects of emotional strength and depth. As
and a lot of us are working with past life issues that are coming up over and over again. Different things. You know, it seems to be non-stop. I mean, some of us are aware, you know, people get flashbacks, or they go under and they get that information and they know what, and others just know but don't have the same experience.
Yeah, that's true. You know, it's what people who have certain gifts, or they might be psychically aware, or they might have a high clairaudience, or clairsentience, as it were. Clairsentience, as we said before in previous conversations, is a heightened sense of feeling. You walk into a certain series of buildings, or you go to a graveyard or a battlefield or a very old building, and you feel that something's not right. There's either a presence, or there are several presences, or there's something that's happening. And we get that usually with things such as our hair on the back of our neck standing up, or hair on our arms, gives us goosebumps. We're aware of other beings. These beings, as I said, they exist in other realms and dimensions. They're just outside our visible light spectrum. As it were, our seeing range. So whereas cats will see them, that they've got a high, pet cats, but if we all had the cat stare at something as a blank wall, they can feel something, or they can spot things around people. And a dog, obviously they can they can hear vibrations, beyond the normal, or our frequency of sound, So within the animal kingdom, you have a close connection with the animal kingdom. You'll find out that there's a lot of gifts that the animals have, and if you have that symbiotic relationship, this is what the druids were very much into, those that were working with nature. Same with shaman and people that were of the priestly classes, magi, of course, that they would work very, very close with nature, and they'd pick up things. It's very, very easy to read the things that happen in nature, and it becomes quite the easy way to read what's happening. It's like the weather at the moment. If it's cold, you can sort of spot it. What kind of clouds are going to be there. If it's going to be rain, things like that. You just get used to it after a while. So once again, same with when there's a presence in a room or a building, then there's a good chance a clairsentient person will feel it, or definitely their pets or their animals will know about it. That's for sure.
Because I know in the past I've driven through different places, and I just get the feeling, I thought, oh my God, I don't know, there's something here, I just don't like the energy here, and you move on.
Absolutely. That's true. There's a lot of places where there's stuck energy, or there's negative vortexes of energy, so something may have happened. There's many recorded cases all over the world, particularly where there's been large battles, massive battles, even around fortifications such as castles or temples. If there's sort of energy that's disturbed, or some ghosts actually tend to, we have poltergeists, will-o'-the-wisps, all these different types. We call them undead. They're not actually in the process stage of going through the different layers of dimensions. They're stuck in what's called a limbo state, and they're stuck there. There's many cases of recorded around in Vietnam where soldiers are still on patrol there. They've been blown out of existence, and their souls are still, their astral bodies are still on patrol. They don't know they've died. This has happened many times before, and this happens all over the world where there's been massive emotional trauma on a massive scale, like massive slaughter of human life or animal life. There's a disturbed energy, so you'll find that that'll have a vortex because of that massive amount of emotional energy. If there's been such death moving into the astral planes, it creates magnetic and electric distortion, because the emotional body has both of those energies associated with it, with the mortality, and that creates like a massive sort of a disturbance, even where beings can pass over. That's been recorded as well. I can give many incidences about that. We can talk about that if you'd like to.
Yeah, because is that like similar to what we say is earthbound souls? They're sort of just trapped around the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are stuck in incarnation cycles. For example, when we dream at night, depending on your awareness with your dreams in the astral planes, you're actually moving into different layers or different densities of astral planes. So they could be what one would may call, I suppose, in a very, very basic sense, like a bunch of different planes, everything from heaven to hell to the heavens to pandemonium, Tartarus, Nirvana, whatever. It's all about the density of the level. So like planes like heaven or nirvanic planes, they're very, very fine density. They're very, very fine. Where something like Tartarus or pandemonium or something like an abyss would be a very, very coarse astral aspect. So getting back to your original question too, Andrena, I didn't mean to dismiss that, but around earthbound souls, they may come for a stack of incarnations. You'll find that with a lot of, I say some souls that are, they're caught up in the military, they'll come back and they'll do the soldier role again. They'll do the soldier role again, and they'll do it again and again through different wars. So if you got, it's interesting, if you're playing with like soldiers or you're attracted to a certain piece of aircraft or a piece of equipment or a particular type of regiment or whatever, some sort of military code, then that would be something that you're very, very strongly attracted to, whether it be in your family line through, your parents or your uncles, or there are so many different cases recorded about this. And also there's been photographs of not just regiments, but like even a squadron of different pilots and the ground crew, and one of the pilots has died, yet the photograph was taken afterwards, but his presence was so strong with that particular group that his presence came back again, in the photograph. And this is not uncommon, as it were. It's quite it's not an uncommon thing. Spontaneous combustion in India, there'd be over 1,000 cases a year that happen there. My teacher used to tell me about it all the time, that spontaneous combustion, you don't hear about it now because once again, it's like people suiciding. A lot of it doesn't get put out in the media because of martyrdom, people being martyred for jumping off bridges and things like that. It's actually it's quite, it's not uncommon. So therefore, in places like spontaneous combustion is when the astral body is late to leave, or they're supposed to go. So it burns through the physical body, which takes several thousand degrees of heat to burn through the physical body for that soul and that spirit to escape, particularly if it's spirit, like the spirit leaves. And the spirit's like a sun being, it's an energy being. So it's not bound anymore in this, so it can break through its etheric chains, as it were, and move into the next realm, the next series of cycles that it needs to be a part of. So getting back to earthbound spirits, depending on the course, one may be doing a series of cycles again and again, or one may have made a contract to a type of being, many of the different energy beings that exist, and they may have to come back and do cycles again. Or one may have chosen missions to come back on this planet to incarnate into these particular families or these particular ancestral bloodlines that have been around for thousands of years, and to do work to create certain events and things to take place. That's not uncommon if you know how, I suppose, the main aspect of these incarnation cycles work. Resurrection's different. Again, resurrection is different to reincarnation. We can speak on that later if you like, but more if you want to talk about the earthbound souls.
I'm just wondering because, different people go different places, and they say, like they're earthbound souls and they're trapped in between worlds. And I think, well,
yes,
unless you're in that field where you're out, somewhere and you're creating a rainbow bridge or something for trapped souls to go to. So what would you recommend for people that they were somewhere and they were aware of something like that? What would you say to people to do to help?
I would study, there's philosophies that you could look at, say, this is reincarnations, in the Vedas, in Hindu. I mean, Judaism has it. I'm pretty sure the old Christian texts have reincarnation. They talk about the resurrection. We'll talk about that later too as well. You can sort of study a little bit there, but also I'd be, before I was going to sleep, I would suggest that people just say, if I've lived before, I'd like to see evidence of it in my dreams. And the dreams is when your soul communicates to you, but it talks in that language, which is a symbolic language. It's the key to understanding that universal language of symbolism. Symbolism is very, very quick because you can empath it or telepath it quicker. It's like an app on your phone or an icon on your desktop. Basically, that's what it is, because it has all the knowledge encoded into it, so it's access all areas rather than sort of trying to stumble through words. If you can empath it or telepath it, it's quicker. So before, in your dreams, because the dreams, basically we spend about a third of our life in the sleep stage, recharging. And obviously when we're sleeping physically, we're actually reproducing a lot more melatonin, which is what they call the night worker. And melatonin, serotonin is very much connected to the fifth element. We need that. It's not too dissimilar in molecular structure to many of the different hallucinogens, such as psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, things like that. Okay, so when you're in that realm, you're actually producing that. So you're actually, people think they're hallucinating, but when you understand how to lucid dream, you actually wake up and find out that you're actually alive in parallel worlds. So you could be working on the other side. Many holistic healers and people that are connected to these particular arts, whether it be shamanic or like priestly people, or many of the different mystics and psychics and so on and so forth, they're very much aware of the parallel realms, and that we don't just exist here. Because I suppose the biggest illusion is people think time is this linear line.
Yeah.
And it's this linear line. It's just this three-dimensional thing. But time has dimensions too. And that's one of the things that Nikola Tesla and many of those particular beings were talking about. Like, we have a three-dimensional world here, like this room. You have, length, height, and breadth, or width, as it were. Or, it's like on the planet. You have north, south, east, west, and up and down. That gives you the six directions, or this three dimensions, but six directions. And you have the seventh, which is the centaur. When you're at the centaur, like you're in control, you're in the moment, you're in the presence. And that's where you can really understand how time works. So time, obviously, let's say we look at it on a map, would be like our planet going around the sun, but it's not going around in circles. It's going around like in spirals. So we're actually, our sun is moving through this particular sector of the galaxy towards, the Virgo cluster. So it's bringing all these other planets with it, which is actually the solar system. And that's actually like it's sort of the solar system is like the solar matrix of ourselves. It's a very, very similar connection to the planetary aspects. So there are other worlds and dimensions we can visit, even outside, not just this Earth, but, even in our own solar system. And also we can access down the timeline when one is, I suppose, like, let's say, spiritually or hermetically or kabbalistically adept at doing that, or, through their own, I suppose, their own cultural disciplines in the spirit work, they can access back down the timeline. So there are many, many energy signatures that are left in certain places, particularly where, strong ley lines cross over, where a lot of temples or sacred sites are. Anything from the pyramids to Angkor Wat, if you went to places on the matrix such as Hawaii or Easter Island, there's a powerful energy in those places, and there's not just one major vortex, but there are several. So you can sort of understand that the planet's a living vortex. So getting back to actually giving people advice on previous cycles, there are many different holistic people you can visit, actually specialize in that sort of area. I mean, I do it. I do readings in that. You can do past life readings, but there are many people that that could be more specific. Yeah, that picture that you just brought up there in the video podcast, thanks Jeffrey, that one there, that's from the Vedic texts there. Many of the different in the Hindu belief system, you see the body just breaking back down, and it's going back into the figure eight, or the world within the world. So breaking down the reaper, the aspect of Saturnian aspect, as you reap, so you sow, the death of the physical body, and then the rebirth, again, back into the next cycle. So one carries astral memories and maybe a few mental memories, but astral memories, soul memories are a lot stronger than like just the mental thoughts, like your own mental thoughts. Mental thoughts are strong, but astral memories are even stronger. They're really ingrained in your soul, very powerful times in your life. Like soul memories are very things that happened decades ago, you know, a long time ago when you were younger, and you remember them like they're only a few days ago, as opposed to some things that happened, you know, a couple of weeks ago, like you've forgotten about. That's like the understanding between mental and astral thoughts and feelings. So that picture there, once again, I've seen many different ones like that, like in the incarnation. So we incarnate to learn many different valuable lessons emotionally, and you know, we get this incredible physical bodies. I mean, they do age, and that's the aspect of time, but time is measuring the soul. So we can access in our dreams down many different timelines, and that's the key about the dreams. It's not subject to the time and space matrix where we're here. It's the inversion of it. It's kind of like you have an opposite law to gravity, which would be levity. You know, obviously birds and insects and aircraft and things like that, they use the law of levity, you know, in opposition to gravity, but the two laws still exist. So the same as with the way time and space is, you have space time and you have time space. So that's what's happening in dreams and the other worlds. You can access them. I mean, there are people here that do it for a living, or they do it as a mission. They go into astral corridors and they save souls, particularly where they're disturbed. But certain ghosts or people that have died, they can't move everyone. I mean, you can move mountains with this knowledge and this work, but there are certain beings that will stay there. Particularly, let's say, if someone's been murdered in an area, you know, or something terrible's taken place, that ghost or that poltergeist will stay there until you know, the murder's either been solved, or there's been some sort of redemption or some forgiveness, as it were, you know, some sort of energetic heart space that's been awareness, acknowledgement to that, you know. They haven't died in vain, as it were.
They could be in that cycle for year or spiral after spiral after spiral.
Yes.
For
yes.
You know, forever for some.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Once again, as I say, generally most of the ones around the castles and that, there's quite a few. I mean, they're all over the world. There's hauntings, you know, and everyone knows what a haunting is. Do you want me to explain what a haunting is? I'm sure everyone knows.
There might be the odd person that doesn't know.
Okay. I'll give you a haunting that people understand exactly. For example, they go to a market, or they go to a book festival, or they go to a gem show, and they pick up a stone or something, and they feel, oh, I really like that, but they don't buy it, and they go away, and then it keeps coming back in their mind, like they're meant to have that book, or they're meant to have that stone or that crystal, they're meant to have that conversation with that person, and they don't do it. So that's a haunting. It comes back and repeats. So the same thing on the next scale up is if a being has passed over, whether they've been murdered or killed in a battlefield or some other tragedy or whatever, and they're stuck in the energy zone of that particular building or that particular corridor or that particular place. I had it happen to me, you know, about 12 years ago. It was down in a small town in Berry. I had to stay in this old mill. Was mill. I mean, obviously, it'd been transformed into some, you know, cafe downstairs and something else at the back, haberdashery or whatever. And I was upstairs and I had to stay there that night. It was too far to drive back after I'd done this presentation. I was in there, and there was a little girl, a ghost. You couldn't miss her, and she wanted to talk. Well, I could see her, because if you sort of see, you know, they see that you can see. They know that you can see. So yeah, I had a communication with her. Hey, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? Do you need to move on? What's going on? So you're sort of empathically communicating, because they're almost like a hologram, or like a ghost, like a ghosted image. You know, you can sort of see the outline if you're good at seeing auras ironically, that was what I was teaching the next day. I was showing this young fellow how to see auras and energy zones. He's one of the guys in the class, and how to see it, how you sort of look for, energy to the edge of things. So anyway, but getting back to the ghost story of the little girl, and I said, well, she's there, and she told me that she died, many, many years ago. I think it was back in the 30s or something like that, in some sort of accident. Anyway, I said, would you want to stay here? And she wanted to see, she was looking for her family line. So, well, if you want to move on, you don't have to move into the light. I just asked that the right beings come to take her to the appropriate area, the appropriate place, so she realigns with that ancestral line. See, bloodlines are very powerful on this planet. I mean, seriously powerful. Blood is life force, and we carry our seeds, and our eggs, as humanoids, as human beings, as it were. So we have the ability to create other life out of our own being, but that's a bloodline that goes back, many centuries or even thousands of years, depending how long you've been hanging around here. I think I've got a few more to do yet. I don't know. But I come across some really powerful stuff, definitely in Europe, that's for sure, and UK.
Never ending, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I remember reading about it. I found those sort of stories very engaging when I was younger, and then it actually started to become part of my life, as I'm sure many other people have experienced those sorts of things. It's a natural part of life. It's just that there's, a fourth dimensional part of oneself. And there's been many cases and studies written about it. Once again, you could go into detail. Just depends what area you want to go into. And like I said, there's a lot of these particular books written by Dr. Michael Newton. He wrote 3 different books on the subjects, and he was a skeptic too. And he's old school. He was, he was born in the 40s. He was there. He was doing. That was a very, very powerful time back in the 40s, 30s and the 40s, when hypnotism was very, very, very prevalent, and hypnotic suggestion is very, very powerful. And he used to use it with his clients to put them in, so that he could do some sort of, the holistic operations. But he said, but when he was putting them into certain states, they started to regress, but they'd actually regress from this cycle, not just this cycle, but actually through the stages prior to this cycle on the other side, and then prior to the next cycle, the next incarnation, and then several messages there. So, I do recommend those books if people want to read them. Dr. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Michael Newton. Once again, I do have the highest regard for people that are quite skeptical to begin with. But the key in all this work is proving it to yourself, knowing the difference between, what you're thinking or what you're feeling, as opposed to, if, for example, if you're a psychic, you understand what your client's feeling, what they're getting. Because if your energy's clean, energetically, you can tap in and see, and it's not coming from you, as it were. That picture that you just brought up there, thanks Jeffrey, is Dr. Jim Tucker. He was the successful protege of Dr. Ian Stevenson. It's another lady there that I used to present together, Prema Kandro. I don't know if they just did once, twice, or a few times. I'm not really sure, but many different people around the parts of the world, they came with their cases, and these people actually, they wrote several treatises and papers and that on the actual subjects of reincarnation, and they had a lot of evidence there. So over the years, just looking at some of these different things.
I know I've read quite a few books have gone to the light, and I can't think of them all now, but it's been really fascinating. And or when they've touched heaven, they've passed but not passed, and then they've come back sharing what wisdom they've brought through now. Some of the information that has been coming through, and I know there's a lady, Alison Coe, she does hypnosis, and she records it, and the information that when they're under, like into the future, and it's just amazing, what you can sort of tap into these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not uncommon these days. There's many people that have done a lot of this work, as to say, through other hypnotic regression and things like that. There's the story now, people that are just calling in or putting those messages up about information and things that they've had. One of my best friends, Jane, he passed over. It's actually in one of his books. I actually have one of his books there. He's a close friend of mine, and I wonder, because he had a terrible accident happen to him. We were stabbed through the heart, and he almost died. And the ambulance took him to the center, and he went out of his body. He had an NDE, and it's actually written in the book there about it, and how he came back. He sort of went up, and he felt that he's around all these really like robed beings, highly advanced light beings, and they said to him, would you like to end it now, or you can come over this side, or would you like to go back and finish your mission? And they showed him what he could be doing, and he wanted to follow his heart and go back. Interestingly enough, he'd been stabbed through the heart with a bayonet. It was actually an assassin that tried to take him out, and he relates it in his book about how when he came back down, he saw this circle of light. He came back down through this circle of light, and interestingly enough, there's a circle of the people, the students that he'd been teaching over the years out the back of the Blue Mountains, had all had these candles, and they were all doing this vigilance outside the hospital where he'd been taken. And he actually came back, and he had to sort of heal in nature for about 18 months, 2 years, lived by a creek, didn't want to communicate with people too much for a while. And then now he's doing his mission. He's following his mission. He teaches Vedic mathematics and things like that. That's what he's meant to be doing, and he's doing it really, really well. He's written many books.
Amazing, eh?
Yeah.
What about sacred sites? I know we just go with the flow here with all these different things.
Why not? Absolutely.
But it's like, I know myself, I find myself going to places over again, or I find I have to detour, and then I find I need to stop somewhere. I think I shared with you Easter holiday. I thought, because I had a pass for Stonehenge, and I thought I'll go into Stonehenge. I was on my way to my son's or somewhere.
I remember that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my God. There must have been a couple hundred there, easy. I couldn't believe it. I've never seen stone. And I thought, it's so interesting that all these people have come to a sacred site, all with their children, and to go around the stones, and probably on a deeper level didn't realize why they were coming.
No, but then again, some of them might have, or it may be something that's going to lead back to that. I mean, Stonehenge is on that incredible ley line in the south of England that runs right through Wiltshire, right out through Glastonbury as well. It was a start with Old Sarum, and it goes to Salisbury Cathedral. I've been in this really powerful part of the world. There was an oak tree. There was a couple of those big old oak trees there that are hundreds of years old. You could see the faces in them. You know what I mean? Like, it's what they call a morphism. That when you see the faces in the trees and in the rocks, and that cathedral, Salisbury Cathedral, is gargantuan. It must be a couple of 100,000 tons of rock just sitting up there on the roof. Flying buttresses. I mean, those things defy gravity as it is. But that's on the same lay, and then it goes right through to Stonehenge and Avebury, and then right out through Glastonbury Tor. That's very, very powerful. I was there. We were there 2002, so over 20 years ago now. It felt really thin, the veils. Everyone here aware of the 7 veils between the realms, and there are certain times which we call, when you have a really strong moon, a very strong full moon in the sun sign. Let's say we call it Wesak. So let's say if it's a Scorpio moon in Taurus, really, really powerful time. There's a thinning of the veils. So beings are very close by from the other planes and realms. I mean, the Mayans talk about that. There's 5 days of the year where mischievous, mischievous spirits can come in. Many of the cultures talk about it. If you look at Islam, they talk about the jinn. I know they don't have a very, very popular reputation, the jinn, but they have the positive aspect of them being the genie, as it were. And these are beings that have passed over, and they're trapped, in places, obviously, as we've seen in the old cartoons and the comic strips and the comic books, like a lamp. They're held in that place. They're actually still a living energy being. The top magicians I know around the world, the high-end ones, they're definitely working with those kinds of beings, no doubt about it. I've seen it because I was studying. I was looking at some of the David Blaine's that work, and I'm thinking, what did you just do? Stop, pause it. There's 24 frames in a second. I'm thinking, there it is and there it isn't. So you're 1/24th of a second. It's like that. I'm thinking, they're working in the astral planes as well. I mean, they're very, very fast, and they're very, very good at what they do. I mean, they're contortionists and they're incredibly fast, and they also know their own anatomy very well, as like to an expert level. But they're definitely working with beings on the other side. It's just that you got to be careful when you work with beings on the other side, whether they be good, bad, or different. You might, create a contract, and then you might get locked into something that you don't want to get locked into, because you better believe it doesn't end on this cycle. It keeps going. Yeah, and hence we know about that as well.
So what is it that draws, what is it? Is it the energy of the ley lines? Because obviously some people think, well, why do I, like I lived in Glastonbury for a few years and I dip in and out. So is it the energy of that ley line that's pulling you in to give you a top up? Is it just, because I know for me, I go into Glastonbury, it's like I have a top up of the magic there.
Well, there are a lot of the standing stones around the world, like they're in the Orkney Islands. There's a Cairn stones and that in Brittany, like all through Europe, Spain. Once again, and our mainstream history books are only telling a fraction of the story. We've now found out we're going back not just 6,000 6,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, and then there was nothing. It wasn't that at all. We understand that was an Adamic cycle. That's the Homo sapiens being brought in. So we're finding there's many other cultures around at the time. Otherwise, it's too easy to pull the Bible apart for the wrong reasons. Whereas if you understand what's really going on, we're looking at many cultures in many different places. So if we go back down different ancient timelines, obviously you're going to understand it wasn't just like, Atlantis and Lemuria and Hyperborea, but there are many of these different ancient sites and cultures around the place. So getting back to the ley lines, so they're like the grids, they're like the acupuncture points on your body, or the acupressure points. So, how you like that soul nervous system, you have a nervous system. That's why I put the chakras, that's why it's really important before we do any of the presentations. People do a meditation, they tune into their chakras, the lymphatic body, and they understand that they're wired up, that they've got, electromagnetic energy running through their body, plus a higher degree of that beyond electromagnetism. So where these stones and that are placed, they're placed on what are called ley lines, or we know them as leys. They're called dragon lines in China, Long May. They're called holy lines in Germany. They're called fairy lines in Ireland. They're called lines of Hermes in Greece. They're called song lines here by the Aborigines. The different American indigenous cultures call them many other things, where we have these magnetic lines where when they cross over, there's usually a lot of ore, high-end metals such as silvers and golds and platinum or plate, or high-end other tricked up crystal, could be rubies or whatever, in a very, very raw sense. But also it's a higher chance for poltergeist activity, a higher chance for paranormal activity. And we used to think, from what Dr. or Captain Bruce Cathy's work was about, that when certain advanced craft, because they're using electromagnetism that we thought at the time, they're putting out like like two magnetic field or three magnetic fields to steer and move. They'd hit into like a neutral space where you have like, you know, when you put two like poles together, like two souths and two norths, you hit that neutral field and just gone, you know. But obviously they're using other things as well, you know, depending on the craft it might be, you know, because they're moving in and out of dimension. They're sort of halfway between a particle and a wave, if you want to look at it in a quantum sense, you know, halfway. So they're not quite a wave, they're not quite a particle, which is basically getting back to what ghosts and poltergeists are, you know. So they're halfway between realms and dimensions, as it were. You know what I mean? Like in this world, it's more solid, you know, but you know, when you're coming out of a dream state, or let's say you've, you know, been in some sort of stasis, you're sort of going through that twilight and you're trying to remember your dreams. You know, wow, how do I get back to that? I remember it was so real. It was so real. And when you're coming in through that, you're coming back into that stasis. It's like a crossover in between worlds. So once again, yeah, definitely the ley lines on certain places would draw people to those places, or they'd feel a certain city or a town, or they would maybe want to not be there. They maybe want to look for a solstice in a silence, like a monk or a bard, or find a small country, you know, abode somewhere where they don't have to communicate. A lot of people would prefer the company of animals, as in Anastasia, as it were. She has that highly advanced connection with nature, you know, where she can talk to the animals and they do the bidding, because her energy's clean. She's not, you know, programmed with, you know, mainstream media hype and all that sort of stuff, you know, because that's obviously got a drive to it going this way, and they want people to believe this. That's the narrative. Whereas if you're in amongst nature, your senses become very aware. I know that from people that have worked in nature for a long, long time. They don't come back to society for, you know, let's say 30 days or, you know, 50 days. They're actually out in nature. So a lot of the higher senses are aware, that they're heightened, you know, like to the point of, you know, fight, flight, or freeze, you know, kind of mode. So they've gone back into that survival mode, but they're very aware. Their clairaudience is increased, their clairvoyance is increased, their clairsentience, clairalience, clairgustience. They can smell things that are, you know, that's clairalience, that they can smell things beyond the normal smell spectrum of the average person. Too many eagles.
Yeah, I know. I found myself at Banbury Rings not long ago, and I mean that's a very old ancient site, but the energy there was so peaceful. It was beautiful.
Yes,
but you know, like some of those places, like Glastonbury. I mean, I've walked up the tour I don't know how many times, and it's always like a pilgrimage, and you speak to people all the way up, and you speak to people on the way down. You know, it's just like this constant coming and going non-stop, and all the ceremonies and festivals and what have you, whereas like Banbury Rings and all that are sort of quieter spaces, aren't they? They've got a different energy.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. We're at Angkor Wat, and
oh yeah, I've been there.
There are many different temples there, but there's some of the stupas that you look at, the way they're designed, they're like capacitors. You know, the way they store energy. And some of the meditation, these stone temples, these smaller temples, there can be tourists over there, you know, making, you know, a bit of a racket or whatever. And you walk into it and it's like a silence, like you've walked into a sound studio. It's almost like you're hearing the feedback. It's like, or like dead silence, you know. And then you walk out and it's this sound again. And then you walk back in and it changes, you know. It's the same as in nature when there's that absolute dead silence, you know, there's no birds, there's no insects making those sorts of noises. It's you know what's happening. There's a change maybe in wind direction, or there's some sort of, you know, large predator around, something like that. You can sort of sense and feel those sorts of things, you know. So once again, you find different places have different, as we're looking at these pictures here, different energies there. Once again, when they get really old, obviously most of the ghosts and that, you know, they've left a long, long time ago. I remember I was at Montsegur, you know, didn't sort of feel much there. It had been, you know, the home of the Cathars, you know, the last stand. Same with Carcassonne and those particular castles. And they're massive, you know, massive massive size. Not so much there, but other places that were only in, say, where the battle was only about 70 or 80 years ago. There was a place called the Blockhouse near Dunkirk in France. We went there, and wow, you could be the toughest skeptic, man. You'd definitely be feeling ghosts there, definitely, you know, because there were so many that were hit, they were bombed, they didn't know, you know, so the ghosts are there. A lot of there was school children on some sort of like an excursion now. They didn't even want to go into certain places, you know, they didn't want to go there. And sort of feel that there was obviously a disturbed energy there, you know. Same as like if you went into some of the, you know, the tunnels in Vietnam or Cambodia and the killing fields there, you know, if you have that sort of clairsentience and it doesn't appeal to you, then it, you know, it'd be for a good reason, you know. Yeah, and obviously, you know, a lot more battles or I suppose disturbance that are a lot more closer to home, then you'd feel that kind of energy. I've done the same thing when there's an incident happened in Sydney. It was you know, shootout that had happened. This was back about 9 years ago. I was coming back home late from Victoria. I was driving back through Sydney, and I went there. It was late, and I was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I got diverted on the road, and I thought, I'm going to go here near this. And I sort of just did a lap around the city, sort of things. Like you could sort of feel there was a disturbed energy there. And I just sort of asked, well, if there's anything I can do from here, from the highest good to the highest light, let it be that some of these souls move over, because it felt it was a pretty disturbed energy. And anyway, ended up just kept driving. I just sort of did what I could do, you know, because it's a more recent thing as opposed to some of the, you know, some of the ancient sites and fields around the world.
And I think what you just touched on there, you know, I know people go and say, I've gone to do grid work and I've gone to clear the energies. And some people say, right, you know, we call in whoever to help them. But it's about being centered in yourself and saying, okay, here I am. What can I do now to help these people move on or to go where they need to be, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to be very careful. Yeah, you've got to be very, very clear on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're drawn there and you're called there, then go there. But you got to get your, you know, tell your ego to piss off, get your ego right out of the way, and be very, very clear and very tuned in to what your purpose is there. It might not just be you, you know, like, for example, if you went to Port Arthur or something like that, you know, so, you know what I mean? There's what happened originally there and what, you know, took place only, you know, 25, 26 years ago, as it were. So you can ask, and that's about the best thing you do. Your love, your caring, or our love and our caring has a very strong resonance in that field, and that's what the real purpose of a lot of our life missions are as well. It's not like we've got to just go out looking for it, but sometimes we're drawn to a certain area, you know, or at a certain time that we would go there. You know, it's not always out of curiosity, as it were.
Right. I know we haven't really talked about the Akashic Records, so I know for some people they don't really know very much, and there's a lot of people that go in and change. So would you like to enlighten us a bit more about the Akashic Records?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I can do that. It was originally part of this talk. I actually, I suppose the first question people ask, what is the Akashic Records? You know, what is the Akashic Library? You know, where is it? How do I access it? You know, when did this happen? Why is it important for my journey to know this? So, for example, if you look at the Akashic Library, you would see it as something like, you know, the Library of Alexandria or all the libraries. As you can imagine, every book that was ever there. And it's even got your lifetime in there. It's something that doesn't exist in this physical plane. It's kind of like the Ark of the Covenant. It's like an artifactual aspect. It actually exists in higher dimensions, as it were. And it's just like you're like a soul traveler or an astronaut or so. You just go into a higher level of meditation, you know, balance your energy, your emotional body, and you move your spirit into that plane. You ask that you have permission to go through all the doorkeepers, and you can access your lifeline there. It's just like you go into a library. You basically have the the librarian there, or the chief librarian, or the curator, or the concierge at the beginning of the library, and then you can access it. And it's just like these massive libraries. It's just halls on halls on halls, like a labyrinth of books, and you can access anything there. And when you want to know about something that really took place, you can look at it. But it's not just books too. I mean, you can actually access holograms, things. Even there are even modern books that have seen it, like with barcodes and that on them, which is weird. It's just, it doesn't matter. It's not like some huge stone tablet you got to turn and blow the dust off. Although they do have those archival things. It's just it exists in different places. I mean, I was first brought into this, when we were doing the work in the Cabal, the School of Inner Knowledge, back in the 80s, in the 90s, and Bill's took us there for quite a few journeys. You had to be really good. You get your meditations up very, very well, tune into your astral body, and then move out of your own being into that particular plane. It's like moving into another dimension, like if you're moving to an air sphere, like the sphere of the elves or the sliffs, or you're moving into a water sphere. You'd move into the plane of the mermaids, but you've got to have the same consistency to actually exist in that plane. And the more you're proficient at building elemental energy, it's elementary. Literally, it actually means that the more proficient, the more you can communicate with these sort of said beings. If you wish to, move into those planes, you can move into fire spheres or planetary spheres. And it's the same thing. You just got to get the right energy, and then you've got access. It's like having a pass, like a scan pass. Access all areas. You can access that library, that knowledge, and whatever you want to learn about, or whatever you want to read about and know about, because I mean that's basically what the internet is anyway. I mean, there's potential misinformation over the screen, but if you know what you're looking for, you just punch straight through that because you know the access codes. It's like going through a Stargate, or if you know the right codes, you'll get in. Might be pretty easy to get in from this side, but getting back from the other side, then you could have issues if you don't know how to. Because it's a combination. And if
it's
you're not
more for the advanced, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Just like living in a building, if you've got like a scan pass or a code to get into the building or through the gate access, then you can go through. But you can't get to certain house because that's another code. That's another series of access codes on earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven.
So what would be, I mean, I must admit, I don't go into the Akashic Records. It's not something that I
don't either hardly much anymore either.
But what
I just teach about it.
Yeah. Why? What's the main reason people would want to go in into a? Is it to with their life now thinking, well, this doesn't make any sense. I need to go into my Akashic to see what's going on.
Yeah, they might want to actually sort of see something as it might have been misrecorded in history. Let's say a battle. They may want to know a time that they were born. They might not have their own birth records. They can tune into it with their own intuition or their own psychic abilities or their own aspects, as it were, that they want to know something. They seriously want to know what happened. I knew there was a lot of anomalies in certain wars, the First and Second World Wars. A lot of things add up on the surface. So that was a curiosity. So if you access it and maybe you don't see it there, or you can't feel it, you can't do the exercise. I mean, we did it in the mystery school. I've done it before once, we could get a few of the students through, but the second time we tried to do it, they just couldn't get the energy that they needed to really practice their basics and that again. And I'm not knocking the students. I'm just saying it takes a lot of energy to understand what you're really doing. For example, I was saying before about moving into an elemental plane or a dimension, you've got to have a very finite frequency to get into it, or the right frequency or the right combination to get into that zone. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. Whichever way you sort of stack it, it's kind of like you're accessing a particular level where you can access knowledge, and you just get downloads. I mean, most of you all had downloads. For example, you've read this, or you've accessed this, or you've seen a really good a talk or a seminar or something like that, and you get a series of downloads, and then you might hit that pinnacle crescendo peak. Is like, wow, listen to this. I mean, some of the books that I'd accessed in there, or those just by flicking through it, I need this, And it feels like I'm thinking, what am I don't understand. I'm not really feeling anything. But that's the thing. It's kind of like you're given something when you're young and you don't understand. 5 or 6 years later, you realize, oh my God, what a key, and then it actually happened, you just messed it up, actually bought this book that actually led you to this series of events, or you got to understand, I always wanted to know who was around before Adam and Eve. So I accessed that. And if you really want to know, you can find out all that. It still exists. You just got to research it. People say they just take the face value of it, and they will only dig this deep. They don't sink their teeth in, My nature is I dig deep, I don't go down the rabbit hole. I get down until I'm in the dragon's lair, I'm there. I don't muck around. I mean, that's most of these people, they think they're digging into this, and there's like they've hardly scratched the surface. Most of the people don't even know what's going down on in Antarctica. You'd be blown out what's going down there,
and that's another subject.
Oh, that's next month there, Jeff. Right. Talk us in, mate. We'll get the sound on. Well, it's just how curious are you? It all stands to reason. What was happening in Europe, in the beginning, the turn of the the 19th into the 20th century. A lot of stuff going on there. There's some very advanced stuff going on to where we are now. Gosh, have a look at that. So once again, I would use that to find out about certain people or certain events, so that I got the real info, to be thoroughly informed on what really happened, as it were. Because I have a completely different view to 99.999% of the people on this planet.
Really?
Yes, I do.
We've talked on some past lives. We've done a little bit on reincarnation. We've done a bit on the Akashic Records,
yes.
and why you're attracted to places. So I know that was in some of the lists that you put for today's show. But I would like to ask about the mystery school that you run. How often do you do it? How long are they? Is it on Zoom?
We did the mystery school back in 2019. That was down in Northern Rivers. I started to do a lot of different teachings there at the Wollumba Lighthouse, Mount Warning, the lighthouse there. I was just doing segments there, and I started to put it together. But now I'm doing obviously live podcasts and things like that. I've been asked to teach overseas this year, so I'll be going towards the end of the year. That'll be on the Tree of Life, but it'll be 10 solid days of 4 to 6 hours intensive, so the Tree of Life obviously will be basically not just understanding the tarot, but understanding the high arcana and the language. So you get to understand the planets, the sun, the moon, plus all the elements and all the constellations and the deeper meaning of certain aspects that are connected there. So it's going to be the elements, the 4 elements and the 5th element, getting to understand the metals and the power, everything from copper to silver to gold, to platinum, and what bonuses or advantages they have on our physical body and our mental body and our energetic fields. Plus, I'll be putting that up. It's actually, I've got the whole website open now. I'm just updating it now. I don't want the link, so that'll be good. The mystery schools are depth. They're in depth. Once again, I did 5. I actually did 6. There was like a bonus one that we did at the beginning, and that was on. It was actually on Angkor Wat, serpents and dragons, and how they are, fundamentally interconnected with all the spiritual disciplines. What were the dragons, and how they were connected to the dinosaurs and all the rest of it, sort of thing, and how they've been written off out of history. Yet they're in every single culture on the planet, that I can think of anyway. So you're talking about some serious energy there, and also we were talking about Angkor Wat in particular and how it split from the Enki and Lil story. That was their sister Ninkashag, who was the mother of the Adamic race, as it were, if you really want to get into that. And she set up a lot of the culture in Southeast Asia and those sort of temples. So you see the serpent aspect, the serpent worship. It goes right through, Thailand and India and everything. Have a look at the serpent culture, and it's representative, obviously, of the Kundalini and Tantra and the dance of the two serpents. I mean, it's the wand of Hermes, for God's sake. It's the Asclepius. It's got the two serpents intertwined. If you understand what's going on there, that's about where they cross over. That's the 7 chakras, and then the ball at the top is the pineal gland, pituitary, and it's soul freedom with the 2 wings. So that serpent culture's in the West, it's more hidden. That's what we call it, a cult. Whereas in the East, it's a lot more obvious. But most people go to the East thinking they're going to get a lot of spiritual light. They will, but they won't get the really, really deep stuff. You have to come back to the West to get that. But it's hidden, and it's hidden in secret societies and cultures and things like that. So if you really want to access that. So that's the key to the mystery school. So basically, if you did the 5 classes, it's obviously going to be beginning. It'll be elements and elemental energy, understanding, the disciplines of meditating with the elements. Because even if you go in the East, you're going to understand that. You're going to work with those kind of energies. And then, of course, understanding constellations and planets and how they affect us and how our Earth's, seasons and cycles relate to that. You'll obviously learn about different gods and goddesses of different pantheons and why they're quite similar in some of their work, like the thunder gods and, the gods of beauty and the goddesses of beauty and also the goddesses that protect nature and things like that, So that all comes together. So basically you're joining the dots of all the, spiritual activities. So because with, I suppose, the mystery schools, you'll have like a basis, you'll understand there's a lot of training about understanding different philosophies, because Zen will come into it, a little Taoism will come into it. You need to understand what Hinduism about, Judaism, what Islam is, just understanding those basics and what are the principles, of those cultures without getting too caught up with it, because you should be able to access all those sorts of areas as well. Hence what we're talking about tonight. You start to tune into other worlds and realms because you realize that you're not just this piece of mortality that dies at the end of this cycle. You're, tuning into an immortal aspect of self, which is what the gods are. But, they're not going to give their energy and their power away. That's called Jacob's ladder because, you got to earn your degrees to get up there. If you're going to go through the ranks of, becoming an officer or something in any of the different military disciplines or any of the different high office, you've got to go up the ranks, and it's not like it's an easy task. Maybe for a while, but when you get to the higher levels, you've got to really know your stuff, as it were. So the mystery schools, give you access to a lot of keys to wisdom, and people ask things, everything from, what's Solomon's temple all about, or, what's the line of David, or what's the symbology of, the golden lions, or, the winged bulls and things like that. So, we cover a lot of that if you want to get into it. It depends. I mean, if you're called to that, you're called to it. Some people just, they'll work with Buddhism, they'll go that way. But once again, when you start to go into Buddhism, you'll understand that there's a massive area of that. If you want to go into Hinduism, there's a massive area there with the Vedas and, all that. If you want to, so it's just important to understand, have a really good depth of that. Some of the different, aspects of Christianity, if you want to move into that a little bit more as well. Who's that fellow? Where's he?
Glastonbury tour.
That's Glastonbury tour. Oh, he's up. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. To the Eggstone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
Yeah.
He's found a shrubbery.
But it's well hidden when you. But it's hidden. But when you know where it is, it's sort of halfway up. As you.
Yeah. Seeing it. Yeah, twisted gnarled trees and things like that. So yes, I'll be redoing the mystery schools again, but teaching the tree of life, and it'd probably be easy to do online if you got international students. I have international students now, so I do live podcasts for an hour or 2 hours, and I put them up on my site at the moment. I'm just updating it, and they can just access it. There's different modes. Some people prefer to go, obviously we're using Facebook here or Messenger. Some people are using the Google Meet is pretty good, you know, for projecting image and that in your talk. And also you can teach, you can bring up slides and talk about it that way. It's like a virtual classroom. So that helps. And then we're doing meditations. It's really good, particularly if you're, you know, you got a night off from work and that. Yeah, lots of people can access the Akashic Records. It just depends on your vibration, your energy. You know, so was it Vera Hollands there? Do you believe other people can? Yeah, it's just you've got to be able to be in the right space. You're not going to get in there if you're scratching yourself and worried about, you know, what's going on, you know, on TV or something. It's not going to work. It's just you're in that energy, so you got to bring your frequency up. It's like speaking another language, and if you're speaking French, you've actually got to sing it. You know, you can't. Bonjour, L'Oreal. You know, you've got to be quite light. You know, so it's about frequency and energy as it works. So yeah.
Right. So I know there were a couple of questions because I think we've talked briefly on some of these subjects. I mean, they're whole encyclopedias, each one, aren't they, in their own right? So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. How far do you want to go? You know,
exactly.
Just going. You know, we could talk on Hollow Earth. Throw that in the mix, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be another one, Hollow Earth, and
talk about that. But yeah, as I say, I just want to make sure that everyone gets everything answered. I mean, so from Greg and that earlier that they were asking some questions and things. So yeah, and it's not for everyone. As I say, some people want, you know, how's this going to help me in my daily life? You know, it's not going to sort of, you know, it's not going to pay your electrical bill, is it? You know, but once again, it's about the concept of like getting your head in the right space. It's like, well, I need to work. You know, I don't worship the gods. I work for them, you know, sort of thing, you know, because worship and work. You sort of understand the K was removed a few centuries back ago in a lot of the sacred texts and scripts. So, you know, let's say if you're a bootmaker or you manufacture cars or you're an artist or whatever, and it's kind of like high energy beings or high energy want to work through you, you know, like Findhorn, for example. If you're going to work with nature spirits, that's the place to go, you know, amongst other places. You know, if you're going to do art, you go to that school. That's basically what the Akashic Library, it's just like an access. It's like, I need an answer to this now. So when you're working with those sorts of levels, like the Akashic Library, this is what I say to people. You have to be very, very specific. Be specific. You know, it's like half the New Age is, oh, I'm abundant, you know, I'm creating abundance. What are you creating? Abundance of thongs or what? You know, like abundance of bills. You've got to be specific, you know, because that's what language and song is about, you know. It's about you've got to narrow it down, get clean, get tight, you know, get like an arrow, you know. It's not by accident, you know, we have a centaur in our astrology, you know, it's the arrow. I'm not going to miss. You know, it's like bang, it's clean, you know, follow the arrow, follow right down the barrel. It's got to be clean. So focus, your concentration. You can't just be too, you know, airy-fairy with that. It's a negative air trait. Whereas positive air is obviously going to be to wisdom and intellect and, you know, that eloquence, you know, in dance or something. So each of the elements.
It's the power of your words and your thoughts, isn't it? And now more so than ever, with all the energies changing and shifting, you know, you really have to think what you're saying and speaking and thinking, because, you know, we are manifesting so fast, so many different things. It's literally be careful what you wish for, isn't it?
Words create worlds. Words create worlds. All you need is the right angle. That's what the L is. Anyway, more on that later, another time. A little bit.
Okay.
For this.
Right. Well, Jeffrey, any questions to finish up with? I saw a few flash up, but
Findhorn, yay. Thank you so much. That's good.
That's a universal building. Yeah. Entrance down. Actually, Oh, hang on a sec.
It's a lotus.
Yeah, I'll just get out of that. I'll go to the people wouldn't really know where what Findorn is. I'll just show you these photos. Just it's really sparse, really inhospitable bloody weather. But this is in summer, of course, where you get daylight till 12 o'clock at night.
So Western Scotland.
Yeah, I mean this Findorn's in over here, so yeah, it's pretty rough and ready. But it's on the same meridian as bloody Moscow. You know that, eh?
I do now.
Oh, okay. So Moscow might have minus 52, but because of the what do you call that current comes up from Caribbean.
I know what you mean. Oh, those particular winds. They're like not the trade winds.
No, it's an ocean current that comes up and produces the warm water, and so as a result, Findorn here doesn't get the.
It doesn't get the really cold sub.
Yeah, it doesn't get the 50 minus whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I get out of that. But it's quite a unique place in itself. I mean, from a spiritual point of view. I mean, Peter and Eli and Caddy were the ones who came together there. I mean, Peter was a major in the SAS. So he had quite a strong discipline. Elaine had this ability to tune in spiritually and get messages. And they got themselves an old caravan and had the kids in it. So they parked it up at the Findorn Caravan Park. And then she would go off at midnight and sit in a toilet block and get all the messages that would come down. So that's how it started. So then Elaine then met Dorothy McLean's came along, and she had another connection with the spiritual kingdom. And then along came, hers was more, I just can't think at the moment. But Neil Abercrombie, when they met Neil, he came from Edinburgh, and he was able to talk to all the elves and the dwarfs and the pixies and stuff. And he was
the nature spirits.
Yeah. So he was the one that when he plugged in, he brought Pan. That was an interesting story. He was down. It was in Edinburgh in the gardens down there underneath Edinburgh Castle, and you could see this little pixie figure going around and going to all these humans who didn't even see him, And when he came up to Neil, Neil went back and went. And he said, "You can see me." He said, "Yeah, I've seen you when you went there, and there." Mm-hmm. So this little pixie fella followed Neil back to his home, and he asked him about these metal objects going down the road. He said, "Yeah, the cars are transport for going from A to B." He said, "You don't have to do that. You just have to think it, and you're there." I mean, what's going on here? So when he went upstairs and he put the kettle on for a cuppa, the little pixie said, "What's all that?" And he said, "They're books." And he said, "What do you have books for?" And he said, "Oh, it's for knowledge." And he said, "You just ask. You get the knowledge." So anyway, it was quite a phenomenal feat, because a few days later, Neil's walking through the streets of Edinburgh, and he could smell this real pungent, earthy smell. And this fella said, "You know who I am? You're not scared of me?" He said, "I know who you are. You're Pan." And he said, "Oh, right. One of my subjects told me about you." And he said, "We've been asked to become part of a project, and we would like to sign up for it. So So what do I got to do?" He said, "Well, you got to go up to this place called Findorn." And so he went up to Findorn and he met them all. And the rest is history. Although Peter upset the whole elemental kingdom, because he went in there and he started with a shovel and pick and started getting into all this bloody bush and stuff, and bracken. And all the elementals went on strike. And so it caused so much bloody grief. So then Neil said, "Okay, well, look, we're going to have to go for a drive." So they went off at night to this place, and they parked up. And Neil said, "Well, we've got to go here." And there was all these little lights, and all the bracken had been pulled back, and they went down this path. And they met the king of all the elves. And then the king, he got fear up him. He said, mate, we've been asked by Pan, to do all this, and you've only destroyed all our homes. Oh, I'm really apologetic, so Pete's down on his knees. I'm sorry, really sorry about this. Anyway, so he said, listen, I'll tell you what we'll do. Obviously, you've got to be told. So he said, my subjects, they will actually pull the root out to the point that when you come along and you just go, oh, okay, so that's supposed to come out. But when you go there and it doesn't come out, you keep it there. Yeah. All right. So there you go. So there's a bit of appeasement went on there, and there's a bit of soul searching offering there. But yeah, it's a phenomenal bloody place where Findhorn merged with all the different spiritual kingdoms. I mean, what was really interesting was that Elaine was doing all her messages, and people would be sent from all over the world, and they all had physical characteristics of their elements. So you had these tall, slim beings, and they came straight out of the dolphin kingdom. And then they had these little short, stocky people, and they were from the dwarf kingdom. And so, and then they had these ET people that would come, and then there was others that would turn up and they looked like straight out the flora and fauna kingdom. And yet, absolutely, if male and female sort of paired up, so if a dolphin type character, met up with a fairy kingdom and they went off, then those two kingdoms then send another emissary. Phenomenal. Right.
Yeah. The fairy tales are true. They're more important than what's in the news at the moment. That's what's important. Doesn't matter. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And then you get Star Lord and Starseed beings as well. You've got a real confederation of beings on this planet. Absolutely phenomenal. It would blow the minds of people. It's interesting too. You're saying Pan. We're talking about now about the ancient hybrid species, because we have the centaurs, the minotaurs, and Pan. They're a satyr, a satyr, half goat, half human. We have many of these around the world. They call them pukas, like a satyr in Ireland. They call them puka, something very, very similar. Now, elemental beings and elemental spirits, you ask them for permission, you can get a lot of work done. I'm sure our friend Greg George could talk to you about that. He works a lot in landscaping. But on that same sort of note, someone's asking about walk-ins.
Is that another subject?
Again, yeah. There's a lot. It's a huge area. If I actually named a lot of the different beings, it's beyond the scope. Okay, next time we'll do it about the beings, if you like, and we can go everything from Hollow Earth to star beings to the type of beings that exist in different planes. Elemental spirits, as I said, that was part of the training of the mystery prior to the mystery schools in the Kabbalah, the School of Inner Knowledge. We had to do that. So we had to do that one night. You actually work and go into the Gnome Kingdom and understand what's that all about. And I mean, you're obviously going, what the? This is just too rich. It's too deep. This is nonsense, but it's not. Because the more you start working with elemental energy, the stronger you can. So you're actually building that kind of energy again and again and again. Same with the air kingdom. Same with, like you're talking about, the mer kingdom, or the water worlds, and then you have the fire worlds, the world of the drakes, and the salamanders. Everything that's there. That's why all this stuff, you can put Harry Potter on again and again if it's got the elements of truth there, where it's taken its stuff from, or Lord of the Rings. It's all taken from a lot of treatises, and the writers, they put their own spin on it, of course, but it's all, a lot of actual truth, again and again and again. And that's what elemental magic's about, and elemental energy is about. So one would understand that these beings have been around a long, long, long time, Like the word wizard comes from the Egyptian vizier. You put a V and W, they're almost interchangeable in High Germanic as well. So Vizier is Wisier, a seer, and they work directly with the pharaoh, which is a god king or a god queen, as it were, that is of that line. So most of the European lines of royalty and that are traced back to ancient Egypt. And
I just found that magic word. That's why Findhorn was able to eliminate the snow. There's that Gulf Stream. I forgot that was the word. The Gulf Stream would come up.
Yeah, the Gulf Stream. That's what we're trying to look for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It goes there. And once again, it's like a jet jettisons the water there incredibly fast. You wouldn't think it'd go all that way, but that's how transmigrational currents and things, work across the planet. And that's what, some people just have no interest in that. Whereas if you have an interest in that, you'll actually attract certain beings that, that you actually like to learn about nature, whether it's the currents and movements of waters, air streams, or even, in this knowledge that I've been learning so long, to be out on the surfboard, like 30 years ago, I'd see this whole migration of butterflies. So you ask about that, and that opens you up into the migration routes of different birds and different species and the different times of, birth and death cycles of nature. When one flows into that, then more knowledge or more energy is gained, more access to other areas, and it never stops. It just keeps going on and on and on.
Right.
I love it. And that's the show, the Elemental Kingdoms. Yeah, we'll be doing that.
Well, that sounds a great subject for next time. So you can send me your list and your availability.
I should send it to you now. So thank you very much for having me once again.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's, so much information is fabulous. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, Jeff reminds me of, he's very earthen spirit to me. He's got that kind of energy and other energies as well. So, and he saw me as the elf earlier, so that was quite interesting.
Hang on a sec. Let's bloody play that one. Show everybody.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Give him the side profile.
Oh, the side profile.
Give him the all that no bloom there.
You can't help it if you work with it. And I said, if I work with the air a long time.
Yeah, the Red Indian.
With it. Yeah, Red Indian. Absolutely. Definitely Navajo and Comanche, Cherokee, and a lot to do with the Iroquois and Montauk.
Oh, Montauk. Well, that's another subject, Andrena.
Oh, well, you were talking before about, you couldn't be in the wrong emotional state. You had to be very clear. I think you mentioned it too, Andrena, when you're working with high energy, that's what the Montauk project was about. They were, kidnapping these kids. And because they're young, they're pure spirit. It's like the golden child in Asia, they'd carry an artifact. You wanted someone that didn't have any emotional programming or issues, because if they touch the energy of the artifact, it's just going to amplify. It's like the curse of certain diamonds and stones, the Pope diamond or the Cullinan diamond. Anyone that touched it virtually had, this terrible series of accidents. I could talk about that too, high-end stones and artifacts, if you want to get into that. But I was just saying, getting back to the Montauk project, they had these children because they had the chair out of one of the craft. There wasn't just one craft at Roswell. There was obviously a series of crafts that had fallen, so they had this chair. And once again, to steer it, like you said, that elemental being, Jeffrey, you think it and you're there. You think it and you're there. And that's where humanity's got to get back to. We're using these things, which is just basically a bunch of metals and stones. But if you know the right metals and stone combinations, it's a mini computer. But if you understand, they're using high-end metals, superconduction metals such as, palladium and platinum. Things like that. Gold, they're superconductors. Oh, gold isn't, but the platinum group metals are. And the right combinations of stones. Lasers, once again, they're just rubies and, emeralds,
Okay, so I actually met Al Billick. So he was
Did you really? Yes, right. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah,
good. We can talk after the show about that. That was one of the pinnacle points in my life. Yeah.
That was his brother Cameron Duncan, who was in the psychic chair, who created the time portals for the kids to go through.
Yeah, Montauk,
Montauk, and of course everybody's seen Philadelphia Experiment, the movie. If we put them onto that, then they'll have an understanding.
Well, I've got his documentaries, and I watch his documentaries. He speaks quite monotone, but what he said about prior to the lead up to the Second World War and the Philadelphia Experiment, it's not by accident they had Nikola Tesla working on that. Roosevelt got Nikola Tesla on that, and then
Professor Neinheimer took over.
Van Neumann took over, and then that's a conversation I'd love to have with you as well.
We have to go because Andrena wants to wind up because
okay, she's got to get some sleep. Okay, Andrena.
No. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. I know we could let you talk on so many things for hours and hours and
Thank
hours,
you.
but
Thank
today we have to call it a halt.
you. Okay, you gonna get some sleep,
So
man.
we look forward to having you back another time to share more of your wisdom.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks very much to everyone for listening. It's been wonderful. So yes, I'll be doing some more lectures and that. I'll put it up on my my website at the moment, and yeah, I need to update that. I know Mark is very, very keen to get the tree of life happening. So thank you very much. Love to everyone, and yeah, may you find what you're truly looking for in your mission on this life. Thank you so much.
Oh, yay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you very much. And next week's guest is Clive DeCarl. So if you've got any health issues or want some advice on what you could be taking to help you yourself in these interesting times, then save your questions up for next week. Okay, goodbye, everyone, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.